Hello everyone, welcome to video. If I see a single person complaining about the fact that I'm holding this microphone, I'm gonna riot. Here's the thing, I have loud neighbors as I have COVID, and my loud neighbors, they be louding today. And I still want to film this video, and so I'm gonna do this in the hopes that I might be able to drown out the sounds of my neighbors stomping around upstairs like their life depends on it. Yeah, if you have a problem with that, I fear that's a you problem. Alrighty, what are we doing today? I recently saw a video by Sophie about reading habits that she admires, I think is the title of her video. I'll link it down below. And she was inspired by another creator whom I'll also link down below, but she essentially made a list of reading habits that she admires. And I thought that was a really fun idea. And since we're the year's coming to a close, we're all kind of thinking about what our reading goals are going to be next year, what kind of person we are going to be in the new year. I love this time of year. I'm going to be so honest. I do. I think it's maybe one of my red flag personality traits. I love the new year. So I compiled a list of reading habits that I think are sexy. I do admire these, but I also just think they're hot. And these are not necessarily reading habits that I do or that I wish I did. Some of these are, but some of these are also reading habits that you could not pay me enough, but if you tell me you do this, I'm gonna think you're hot. So I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't know what you expected when you clicked on this video. Let's get started with the first point. I have them written here in my reading journal. And the first one I have in here is putting in time and effort to learn your favorite quotes. And by this I mean specifically reading something in a book or play short story, whatever, in a written text and being so moved by it that you're like, I need that in my brain for the end of time, basically. If we end up in an apocalypse, I want to be able to access this always. I don't want to have to rely on paper to provide me with these beautiful words. I think I recently had a discussion about this with some of my friends about how I generally think we should put in more effort to preserve beauty in our head and not just rely on outside factors to provide it for us. And learning a poem, a line of Shakespeare, something along these lines, that is exactly what this is to me. You're preserving a piece of beauty for yourself. One thing that I have taken effort to learn by heart, for example, is the prologue of Romeo and Juliet, which, fun fact, I have also written down in this reading journal, and I just know the entire thing. Am I ever going to use that piece of information? No. Do I still think where civil blood makes civil hands unclean slaps so hard? Absolutely. And that is why it's preserved in my mind for all times, hopefully. If you told me you have memorized, and I don't care what, okay? You can memorize the first page of, I don't know, It Ends With Us. I haven't read that book. I don't know if it's actually as bad as people say or if they're just haters. But if you want to memorize that, if that is meaningful to you, you go ahead and I will find you sexy for it. Next up. I call this community library, lending out books to friends and family and also borrowing books from friends and family. This is so hot. Caring more about having friends and family that get to read your favorite books, that take time and effort to read your favorite books, caring more about that than the really just in your mind existing fear that they might ruin your book, you might never see it again, that sort of thing. I do think that's hot. I do because at the end of the day, okay, I'm gonna be so if you're anything like me, my books, if I buy it new, is 11 or 12 euros. And that would be annoying if it got lost or broken or whatever. But it's not a financial loss I will never recover from. I can just repurchase the book if it really comes down to it. But I don't know, having when I'm in a friend's place and they're like, hey, you want to borrow that book? I'm like, yes, I would, actually. I've never thought about reading it before, but now, yes, I do want to lend out that book. Please and thank you. And also, just lending out your books to people, as I'm someone who obviously, likes to read, and I like to read more than a lot of my friends. Maybe so, when someone expresses interest in something that I own, I am so willingly shoving it in their face, you won't even believe it. Because I I care more about them sharing this love with me than I care about the object. And I think that that is a hot take to have. Next up, using books as a means of understanding the people close to you. By this, I particularly mean we are all limited to our own world experience, right? Like, we only really know what we know. And books are a beautiful way to expand our knowledge and kind of gain access to worlds and perspectives that we could never live ourselves. And so when you consciously make an effort to understand people close to you through books, that's hot. For example, you have a sibling that recently came out as trans, and you know that you know what their experience has been like in terms of like acceptance from friends and family, how long it took them to come to terms with that, but you don't really know their lived experience. And so if you go out of your way and seek out books by trans authors or about trans characters or a nonfiction book about the transition process, hot. Another example of this would be, I have this written down later, but I think it actually works here as well. Wait. Reading books about minorities, specifically about minorities that live very close to you. So that might be if you're in North America, reading about the native people in your area, or reading about larger immigrant groups in your country. Also what it's like for these minorities to live in your country now. This could also be, obviously, minority sexualities, any sort of thing like that where you consciously think to yourself, I do not know what that experience is like, so I'm gonna find the fuck out. Hot. Okay, this one is a little bit more niche. Committing to a certain collection of classics specifically. As you can tell, this is not me. This is not me. It has never been me. It's never gonna be me, I fear. However, if I come into your home and you have like all of the Fischer Verlag collection, all of the Reklam collection, all of the Oxford World's Classics, all of the Penguin English Library, whatever it is, I don't even care about what specific edition it is. You could literally collect the HarperCollins €3 a book collection. I don't care. I'm just impressed that you have committed to something, and I'm just impressed with the uniformity. I just think it looks hot, okay? It's a sexy look on your bookshelf. Again, couldn't be me. Never gonna be me. I prefer to have like all my books be beautiful as individual books and be well readable as individual books. But man, there's something about a matching collection. Also, if you're like dedicated to a certain publisher, especially if it's like a small indie publisher, that's hot. Yeah, it is. What do you want me to say? The next one, oh, I love this one. This one's so hot, and it's also really fun. Actively spending time researching for unknown or obscure books and reading them. This one is pretty self-explanatory. I love people that don't rely on what's popular on the bestseller list on social media to tell them what to read. I think you need to look at very obscure niche books that have like 200 ratings on Goodreads, and you need them, and you read them, and you write a written review for them so that other people can find out about them. And I think that's hot. You're the backbone of the literary community. And I try to do this a lot. I do spend a lot of my time researching books. I don't spend as much time reading more niche or obscure books. I really wish I did. It's one of my reading goals for next year. There's gonna be a video on that, don't worry. But I do think that just also engaging with this hobby in a way that isn't just sitting down and reading, I do think that's also hot. Yeah. Kind of the next point also ties into this, which is consistently writing reviews. And I've written here in parentheses, and not posting them, ? Here's the thing. I like, in general, if you write reviews consistently, you're so cool. You're hotter than me. You're hotter than probably most people you know. You're intelligent. You're brave. You are the backbone of this community, and I love you. However, if you write reviews just for yourself and you don't post them anywhere, you don't care who reads them, who learns what you thought, you just write them to remember the book and kind of to manifest the reading experience in your mind and to have something to refer back to for conversation or maybe for your own writing or something along those lines. I do think that that's really cool because like you don't always need to be perceived to be intellectual, to be engaging with your text. Like people don't always need to know that you're doing that. Again, I love knowing when people do that. I love being involved when people do that. I love reading reviews. I love making reviews. But if you just do them for yourself, I'm a little bit impressed by that. Not needing that outside validation. That's pretty cool. The next point, using your currently reading as a conversation starter. If you don't do this, what do you talk about with people? When I was writing this list, I was like thinking about this and I was like, I feel like 90% of the productive conversations I have with my friends start out with one of us being like, hey, I recently read X and this is what I thought. What do you think? And I do this a lot. I think my friends are probably tired of hearing about The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I've been reading this for a couple of weeks now. And I think all of my friends are tired of hearing about it, but I'm not done talking about it. It's just such a good book. But I do this with fiction, nonfiction, essays, short stories, it doesn't matter. If it is written down and it makes me think about something, I'm gonna ask my friends about it and we're gonna have a conversation about it. And if you're friends with me and you're annoyed by that, you're just gonna have to make your peace with that. That's just what it's like, I fear. So please let me know, what do you talk about with your friends if you don't talk about the books you're reading? Also, this is just, if you come up to me and you're like, hey, I read this interesting thing, and here's what I thought, and do you have anything to say about that subject? What do you think about that subject? I think that's such a meaningful way to start a conversation because it's something that you're obviously interested enough in and passionate enough about to kind of go the extra step of involving someone else in the conversation. And especially if it's something that makes you think and makes you really question things. And then you go ahead and ask someone, especially someone who's important to you, what they think. I don't know, it's just such a meaningful way to engage in conversation, in my opinion. And I think it's a little bit sexy. I do. The next one, this is the last one. This might be a little bit controversial. I have written here, sticking with the book, open parentheses, for a minute, close parentheses, open parentheses, not necessarily to the end, close parentheses. And what I mean by that, I'm a chronic DNFer. The amount of books I do not finish in a year, ridiculous, okay? And usually why I DNF a book is not because I dislike it. If I dislike a book, I will DNF it, obviously, but I don't come across books I don't like very often. Usually I just get bored or distracted or I fall ill with scarlet fever for 6 weeks and like life just gets in the way and then I don't finish them. And so people that kind of stick through that, maybe stick through any initial boredom, try to sit with the text longer than they maybe want to, just to like properly engage with it. I think that's a little bit impressive. I wish I was more like you, honestly. I do have to say, like, when I dislike a book, I usually try to get to the halfway point. Because by that point, sometimes, like, a book just starts off poor, right? Like, sometimes you just don't like the beginning. However, if I'm getting halfway through your text and I still think it sucks, I've given you all I got. And by that point, I do think it's valid to DNF. So this isn't about like never DNF a book. It's more about like being very intentional with your DNFs, understanding why you dislike a book and also deciding to stick with it anyway, to like give the book a fair shot at convincing you of it. I do think that's a little bit sexy. Also like being able to DNF books. I actually do think it's quite an unsexy habit to never DNF a book. Not to be controversial on here, but like being able to stick with something you don't immediately enjoy, but also being able to make an informed decision about not finishing a book because it's just not for you and life's too short. You don't need to force yourself through that. Okay, and that, ladies and gentle people, is it for this video. I hope you had a good time. Let me know, did I miss anything? Do you disagree on anything? Maybe that would be a little bit sexy. What are some reading habits that you really admire in other people specifically? Something that you don't do, something that you don't maybe even care to do, but something that you do find admirable. let me know down below. I hope you all have a beautiful day. This is still coming up before Christmas, so I hope you have a good Christmas if you celebrate. And I will see you all probably next time with my 2026 reading goals. Bye!